Greg Phillips at NAMM 2018. I'm with Dan Fiorentino, who is the music historian for NAMM.
That's right.
The archiver of all things. Dan, the major project for you is the NAMM oral history. But before we talk about that, can I ask, what was the spark that lit your musical flame?
Aha, great question. Well, first of all, great hanging out with you.
Yeah.
Good to meet you today. I would say that when I was a kid, my mom played the piano and organ for, like I like to say, every wake and wedding at church.
Okay.
And so I was underneath the foot pedals all the time as a young one, and I just absorbed the music and played the saxophone when I was a kid. And when I was a teenager, I had an opportunity to conduct some interviews for a local radio station. I had a radio program. And at the time, there were an awful lot of jazz musicians from the big band era still around, and I had a little show about the big bands, particularly in America, but also in Europe and other places, and was able to do a lot of phone interviews and some live interviews, and I just caught the bug. That was it for me. I mean, I've always a passion for music and the history of it. I grew up always wanting to know in the liner notes, okay, that's Elvis. Boy, he sounds great, but who's on guitar? Yeah, who's the guy on drums? I was always very interested in that. And now, as a part of the NAMM Oral History Program, we're able to preserve some of those stories. So, of course, it's kind of come full circle for me.
Yeah. You're also a musician. You play sax?
Yeah.
So what sort of gigs have you played over the years?
Well, I play a lot less gigs than I do, since the Oral History Program began, but I've played out a few times. It's mostly for my own entertainment. I grew up listening to Coleman Hawkins and Body and Soul, a great recording that I think I'll never achieve, but I'll always try. And so it's great motivation to say, I can get that. Oh, I could get that little nuance. But it's the appreciation, I think, of music that has been my driving force, and being able to play somewhat allows me to really appreciate those people who can fly over the instrument and all instruments. And so I think that appreciation, as a lot of people say, really the bit of charm is, for me, the fact that I'm a fan. I mean, I just absolutely admire people who have a passion for music, who have had a career in music, and who can sustain that passion by, having a job and opening a music store, having a publishing company, creating an instrument, building an instrument, selling it, repping it. Those kind of things are very intriguing to me because it takes a lot of passion.
Sure.
And we know an awful lot of people who aren't making $1 million, but are very, very happy doing what they do. And I've been very fortunate to not only meet a lot of these folks, but actually document their story.
Yeah. So the NAMM Oral History Project, when did it begin? Why did it begin?
Well, the NAMM board got together in 1996 with ideas of creating something to help perpetuate the history of not only NAMM, but the music industry in general, because NAMM's 100th anniversary was 2001. Right. We started in New York in 1901. I wasn't there.
No, I was going to ask.
Were you? No. So Mike was there, sorry. Yeah. Anyway, the organization was looking at its 100th anniversary and said, what can we do to help celebrate this milestone, but also give back? So we started a small museum at the headquarters building in Carlsbad, California, for which I'm very honored to be the first curator to help get that off the ground. And they earmarked some money for this oral history idea to do one-on-one interviews with some of the luminaries. And I came around and said, oh yeah, I can do that. I've been doing that since I was 16 years old. So it was a perfect fit. And the goal really is to preserve those stories. We all go out to drinks and dinner at NAMM shows and AMA conventions and sit across from somebody and say, wow, that guy did that? Wow, you were there when he was there? Those histories and those things we all are very passionate about. I mean, this industry really gets what history is all about. And I remember I took a marketing class once, and they were talking about libraries and oral history programs and things, and said, the number one thing you have to do is you have to market yourself. You have to make sure that when the budgets get cut, you don't get cut. And I have to say very honestly to you, I'm so blessed that I've never had to do that, because our members are the ones who are professing how important it is. I don't have to do it. They're saying, hey, can you get my first boss? Can you do an interview with him? Because he inspired my whole career. That would be really important to me. Sure, yeah, let's put him on my wish list. You know, can you get this guy? Here's a mentor of mine who's been a mentor to 10 people in the industry. You ought to archive his story. So we started off with this small little idea in 2000 to interview 100 interviews in 10 years to mark our 100th anniversary. And by the 10-year mark, I was over 1,000 interviews. Wow. So I kind of got the bug. Yeah. And I was very inspired by people who, like Henry Steinway, for example, one of the first guys we interviewed. At the end of the interview, he says, I get what you're trying to do. Well, if you're going to interview me, you got to interview. I got my notepad out, and he's just naming names. You know, this dealer's been around. These guys were one of the first Steinway dealers. You got to get that guy. You got to get this one, and it just grew and grew in importance because people were starting to get it, but also growing in that it's not just the heads of the companies that we're interested in. We're interested in the story, and sometimes the story is a lady named Abigail who worked for Fender for, I think, 42 years, and just wound the pickups. Yeah. That's all she did.
But
right?
how important?
How important. Got to get that story. Yeah. She happens, her little web clip on our website is one of the most watched videos of the whole damn website. Yeah. So you can't say that the position is important. It's their contribution that's important. And that's something that I've been very, very, very blessed.
Yeah. Obviously, you're a music fan and probably met some of your heroes along the way. What are some of the pinch yourself moments that you've had along the way?
There's a lot of those. Yeah. My go-to answer to this question is far and away Scotty Moore. I mentioned earlier listening to Elvis as a kid and saying, who's that playing guitar? Yeah. And it was a big deal for me. When I was a kid, there was nothing called the internet. And so the little 45 record that I had of Shake, Rattle, and Roll by Elvis, the back of it only talked about, you know, he used the grease for his hair and, you know, this is how you can sign up for his fan club. And it didn't say who played on that. So I took it down to the lady at the library and the reference librarian when I was a kid, and I plunked the 45 down on her desk and I said, who's playing guitar? Yeah. She's like, I don't know, but let's figure it out. So we sorted through all these books, and finally there was some credits given, and that's the first time I heard the name Scotty Moore. And it was just like, wow, that's it, that's Scotty Moore. So anytime I heard that riff, and if you know Scotty Moore's sound, you can pick it up no matter who. It's not just Elvis recordings. You can, oh my gosh, I didn't know he's playing on this song. It's totally distinctive. And I felt cool that I was among the people who knew who that was, right? So fast forward to my first NAMM show in Nashville in 2000, I got to meet him. And what a nice guy. Yeah. It was just wonderful. He was just like a regular guy.
They say you should never meet your heroes, but I've never found that.
I've never found that to be a negative thing. I mean, there's a few people I've met that I may have caught them on a bad day. So, but there's very, very few of them. It really is true. And Scotty was a great example of that. Just a real human being, a real nice guy. And we got along very well. He'd call me, I'd call him, kind of thing. Yeah. And so not only did I get to meet him, but I actually became friends with him. So that's a pinch me moment for sure, because that was, you know, very personal.
What do you hope people get out of going to the website, and how should they use the website? How do you navigate it? How do you recommend to people that they look through the website?
So if you go to NAMM.org, NAMM.org, there's a banner across the top, and you'll find the word library. If you click on it, the first page you come to is the oral histories. And that allows you to see some of the most recently completed interviews. There's also a search button down there in which you can put keywords in if you are looking for somebody specific. And if you go to advanced search, you can look at keyword tags that we have in there. So each interview that we have, we post on our website what I call a web clip, which is a segment of the interview, maybe 5 minutes long, along with a little bio that we write. And then importantly, underneath the bio are keyword tags that link that interview with all the others related to that topic. So for example, Fender Guitar has a tag, World War II has a tag. It's not just companies and products, it's topics. Elvis Presley has a tag, strangely enough. I don't know how that happened. And if you click on it, you'll then get a whole list of the people related to that topic that we've interviewed. And then you can look at those interviews and listen to some of those. So navigating through is fun, and it allows you to see how our industry connects. And that's the fun thing, is that you'll be maybe looking at all the piano guys and say, oh, now I'm looking all of a sudden at these retailers. Oh, I remember this store. And the feedback that we're getting is that those tags are really important for that kind of research and experience.
Yeah. The other great thing about the archive is that it charts the history and the progress of the music products industry. I'm just wondering about the future and your thoughts, because taking the guitar, for example, in the 70s we had heroes like Clapton and Hendrix and Jeff Beck, and then into Eddie Van Halen and Steve Vai, so forth, so forth. The guitar these days is used in a different way. It's on the radio, at least. It's more of a textural instrument. Sometimes you don't even know that it's the guitar that's on the record. It could be a keyboard or it could be a drum, and vice versa. The keyboard could be playing a guitar part or a drum part. So we don't have those heroes as much, the idols. Do you think that's affecting the industry in any way?
I think so. I think that without a doubt, we have to have heroes, right? And I think that we do. I mean, young kids that I know do have heroes. They just don't look the same, and they maybe only have a small little niche. You know, you referred to Eric Clapton. Well, that was everybody's hero. I was a saxophone player, and he was my hero, right? Just the way that he could make that instrument sing. And so I think the icon might be temporarily out of reach right now, but we're always very hopeful that there will be more. But I do think that regionally, you know, a band teacher in your high school or a guy who plays the sax around the corner, I think people are still inspired by other musicians. And I think that what we just need to do as an industry is to foster that whenever possible. Open up venues at your store, you know, support those local parties around the block. You know, give kids the opportunity to hear live music so they can look and say, oh, what stomp box is he using? I didn't know he could do that. Or how is he doing that little trill on the organ? And being able to see it firsthand, I think, are the inspirations that you're referring to that helps ignite that passion in people that say, wow, I want to do that, or I can do that, which is very important.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, music education in the schools is very important to NAMM, and that's something that we've been fighting for, not just in the United States, but across the globe. And I think that those are the other things that allow us to spark that interest with a band teacher and band performances with your peers that encourage kids to continue to play an instrument.
Yeah. I did an interview once with Lenny Kay, who is the guitarist for Patti Smith, and also a bit of a music historian or author, music journalist. And he was telling me about a quote that he and Patti were fond of, and he couldn't tell me who to attribute the quote to, but to paraphrase, it went something like, those who document history, history will come to them. And I can't think of anyone more appropriate to say that quote in front of than you, Dan.
Well, that's an honor to hear you say that, because I know the quote you're referring to. And yeah, I mean, that's part of the passion, right? Is that if you put the spark out, hopefully you get a little bit of the glow. And I think that for me, that's been my whole career. Since the first guy I interviewed, which was a trombone player for Louis Armstrong named Trummy Young, I was 15 years old. And I just sat across from this man who told stories about Louis Armstrong. Wow. And touring with Duke Ellington and meeting some of those guys, just said, wow, I just really want that story to be preserved. And on a more of a somber note, he passed away just a couple of months after I interviewed him. His daughter reported that I was the last one to do an interview with him, It's 15, that's a big responsibility. But almost hand in hand immediately of the capturing the story was preserving it, because there's no other.
Yeah.
That's what you have is all you're going to get. And that became very important to me, which led to our tribute at the NAMM show, where we honor folks who have passed away. It led to us creating a in memoriam page on the website of all those that we've interviewed. You can go there and see those as they happen. It's kind of a way to mourn them, but also say we've captured that story.
Yeah.
You know,
And to celebrate them.
Celebrate them, absolutely, and to continue to learn from them, which is very important. That's the main reason that they agreed to do the interview to begin with. Is you know, yes, let's document this.
Yeah.
So I'm very honored about that. That's a humbling experience to be a part of.
Yeah. Well, Dan, thank you for the work you do, and it's been great to chat.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all what you do.
Okay.